Hello everybody, this is Anthony for Investors Underground. Today, I have the distinct pleasure to get to sit down and chat with the one and only Lance Breitstein. I highly recommend everybody listening, especially traders, to go follow him on Twitter at @TheOneLanceB. There, Lance shows his dedication to giving back to the trading community by sharing his wealth of knowledge, experience, and trading concepts. After graduating college from Indiana University, Lance joined the trading desk at the proprietary trading firm Trillium. Over the span of his legendary 11-year career, Lance enjoyed consecutive 8-figure years in both 2020 and 2021, earning himself the rank as top trader during those years. He later went on to beat the firm's all-time P&L record, and he helped build out, manage, and mentor traders at the firm's Chicago office. He later started Impact Competition Foundation, a nonprofit whose mission is to empower students to help tackle the most pressing social issues within their community. Hello, Lance. It's a pleasure to get to speak to you today. Thank you for being here.
Hey, Anthony. Thanks for having me. Very happy to be here and love what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to get to talk to you.
Absolutely.
So, how did you get started with trading?
Sure. So really, I had no background or upbringing in it. And I went to the Kelley School at Indiana University because finance and business seemed interesting to me, but all of it seemed cool. There were times when I thought I would do accounting or entrepreneurship or do a startup. And it was this massive world of just things that seemed cool, like any college student. And I think it was over the summer of my sophomore year, I read some book on stock market investing, and the thought of compounding money and the power of compounding really, really interested me. And I knew that the younger you are when you start, the more powerful it becomes. And after that book, I started reading other books. And I think that was even like the early days of when Amazon was gaining popularity. And I went online, and some of the top rated books were the Market Wizard series by Dr. Jack Schwager. And the second I read those books, it was game over. For those that don't know, it's a series of interviews with some of the best traders and investors of all time. And you learn how many different ways there are to skin a cat and all the different styles and strengths and weaknesses of these traders. And once I read that, I was hooked. And the thought of learning, are markets efficient? Are they perfectly efficient? Can they be beat? How does one go about doing that? And the most important question, can I actually beat the market? It just seemed like this amazing challenge and journey with also a very rewarding premise given the money you can make on Wall Street.
That's great. Those books are absolutely legendary. Given your trading career, did you ever imagine that you would achieve as much success as you did, to the point that maybe you'd end up in some form of a Market Wizards book yourself?
So here's the funny thing is, I think any kid that wants to get into the NBA, everyone wants to be Michael Jordan or something. And then people probably get hit with the hard realities of life, in which 99.999% will never be Michael Jordan. And so I'm sure maybe I toyed with the idea of like, ooh, I could be really good one day, but who knows whether I really necessarily believed it. And then you end up on the job, equivalent to ending up in the league. And then you say, holy crap, like this is really, really hard. And I very quickly went from maybe dreams of being great to, oh man, this is the coolest, best job on earth. I hope I can just make it. Like if I can even forget shooting the lights out, if I can just pay the bills and make a decent comparable living at this is so much cooler and better than anything else I could be doing out there. So I was a slow learner. It took me, my first year, I did not have a single positive month. So, again, for 1 year working my butt off, nobody out there worked like I did. And so you very quickly, those dreams and things talk about like taken back to reality. It was like, okay, like I just need to, how can I make 1 grand? How can I make $500 here? How can I make 2 grand here? How can I piece together a solid month? I don't care about anything beyond that. I just want to do this job compared to like, seeing my twin brother was investment banking and I know what those hours are like, and seeing how brutal and boring some of the accounting stuff can be if you work for the big four or the consultants that are always traveling every weekend. I'm like, just survive and make it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's so much there to unpack. I think a lot of traders or even aspiring traders, they think that it can be so easy, or they think that maybe in the first year, that's when the first Lamborghini comes in, maybe at the 11th month or something. But it's significantly more difficult, to the point that, right, like in the first year, if you break even, that's a pretty awesome month, like worth celebrating. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
maybe some of your friends are actually, green on the month.
Yep. And I don't think I was ever disillusioned about the learning curve. I think the big appeal, what was so great about everything, was just the ethos of trading. Because if you take something like investment banking or the big four, the formality, the face time you got to put in, the bureaucracy, a lot of the BS, even things like wearing a suit to work. Like I very much kind of had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to do things my way. And the thought of, I thought I was, look, I don't think I'm Rain Man. I don't think I'm Elon Musk or anything, but I thought I was like sharp enough. And more than anything, I just knew that nobody was going to have more grit or work harder than me or care more. And that was in my control. And I knew that. Like, look, maybe you really do actually need to be a genius. I had no idea, but I just knew, they will need to pry this job, from my dead body. And the whole premise was like, without being Rain Man, without being some computer science whiz, you can just, through your own soft skills and grit, really persevere and come from nothing to massive success. And coming from kind of a background where money was definitely an issue at times. So like the thought of like, I remember sitting on the desk next to my trainer, and he was one of the best ever on the street. And so I specifically made some big sacrifices to train directly under him. And I remember there would be days where, some really big days where he'd make a couple $100,000, or then even normal days where he would just make 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand. And I would just say, like, Lance, like, if you can even just do, a tenth of what this guy does, if you can even just learn anything and just get the basics and just do the little layups alongside this guy, you need to figure this out. It was just between the lifestyle and the casualness and the thought that the world is your oyster. There's this huge universe of strategies and things, and it's just for you to figure out through time, effort, and thought.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced during that first year? And was that typical of normal first year trader sort of issues? Was there anything particular that you had to deal with and overcome that some of the other traders were already, breaking out of? Or does everyone just have their own sort of struggles in trading?
Sure. So I think there's parts that everyone struggles with because, of course, finding edge is hard. Executing in real time, there's psychology issues. Everyone has the same general issues you must surmount to extract money from the market. Then everyone also applies their own personal limiting beliefs, their own biases, their own weaknesses, their own strengths. So probably most detrimental for me, this will probably blow everyone away, but I tend to be, I'm fairly conservative, I would say. Like, I'm actually not some huge risk taker. I'm actually, if you were to talk about doing dumb, dangerous things, I'm pretty risk averse. And I'm also extremely reflective and thoughtful. Everything I do is very planned out, very thought about. It's not spontaneous shoot from the hip. And so for the style of day trading, that Trillium specializes, it's very much, we're not competing over hours and days. We're competing, or even minutes, honestly. We are competing on seconds and tenths of seconds there for some of those strategies. And if you're a very diligent, thought out, systematic person, here I am where it's like, yes, on the whiteboard, I'm going to weigh the pros and the cons.
Mhm.
Allow me, Mr. Market, these 5-10 minutes to get back to you. But meanwhile, the trade's already gone. And even in the 5 seconds it took me to say that, a breaking news trade, boom, it's gone generally, in seconds. And so that was my big weakness. But now if you were to ask me what was my strength, it was essentially that systemization and that diligent thinking. So at some point after a lot of struggle, I had the thought, like, wait a second, Lance, like, this is your strength, that's your weakness. How can you use your strength to turn your weakness, to overcome this weakness? And that got me on the path of meta learning, right? So how can I diligently plan out the most effective ways to learn? If I'm a slow thinker, how can I train fast thinking? How can I increase my processing time? And so I was kind of paradoxically very deliberate and intentional and reflective on how to increase my thinking speed. And some of the solutions I came up with was I started recording all my screens. I did a video recently with S&B Capital about building this database of videos where whatever the biggest trades were of that week, I'd be recording my screens the whole week. And so I would condense each week down to maybe 15, 20 minutes of video. And I would just, on the weekends, replay those again and again and again and retrade them. And so much of the analogy I give to people is, if you're a 16-year-old trying to drive a car, you're processing so many things at once, and you struggle and you have slow reactions, poor reactions, because it's all, none of it, you don't have these pathways built up that you can just like short circuit a lot of this. And so now as an adult, like if you and I were to drive, we can talk on the phone and eat a Big Mac while driving the car on the highway and everything else, because so much is now automated in our brain. The way we're processing, we have so many driving hours under us and so many reps that I know, the jackass like speeding up to traffic is going to try and cut in front of me. You can anticipate. And so much is building those connections in your brain just through reps. And so I would do reps and reps and reps and reps. And what's crazy to me is I ended up probably being one of the fastest people on the street. If you were to look at order flow inefficiencies and stuff like that, there was probably, I would wager there's probably nobody faster than me in the world on some of this stuff. Because like if there's an order flow inefficiency and maybe 100,000 shares were available to get, and I get 70,000 of them, it's like, well, no one else was out there. And it was all just through those practices.
Wow. Yeah. That's really interesting, because it sounds like it wasn't just all gaining more experience. It sounds like there was also a lot of inward reflection and understanding yourself. And like you had mentioned, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and being able to flip those either inside out, or at least come to terms and make friends with maybe some of your weaknesses, to the point that maybe they'll still be there. You learned how to pretty much tame them and use them to your advantage.
Yep. And I've worked with a lot of traders as colleagues, as trainees. Like I've mentored them. I've trained a lot of people, and there are some people that are naturals and they don't really need to put as much work in. They don't need to be as systematic. I did a daily report card, which was just a daily review of my trading every single day for countless years. No excuses, never missed day really. And I would have to put in the work just because a lot of things didn't click for me. And there's people that don't need to do that. And good for them, like lucky them, but certainly that systemization and that meta learning was kind of what it took for me, and then what became my expertise in training other traders.
It's refreshing to hear that you didn't just knock it out of the park from day one?
Way more important is how quick you are out of the gate is, and I talk about this with Atomic Habits. And the whole bobblehead concept. It's how long are you improving for, and how long are you sustaining? That determines where you end up. It's not how quick you are out of the gate. If you start up here but you're going like that, you're getting nowhere. I'd rather start down here with a really nice slope.
Yeah, for a good trajectory.
Yeah, a nice slope and a long runway. That's everything.
And in some of the work that you were doing, was there anything other than reviewing your trades? Like, for example, were you working with like a visualization or, any visualization coaches, or even just like coaches outside of, maybe your firm? Were you working with some of the more experienced traders on your desk? Were you, doing trading simulators as well? Like, how extensive was that type of work, like at the desk and also away from the desk?
Sure. So certainly the early years, I didn't have too many outside resources besides just my trainer, who is, of course, one of the best resources you could have ever asked for. And so also by the nature so I started actually in a satellite office in Princeton, New Jersey, specifically to trade under this trader. So as a result, I was very insulated for most of my years in the beginning. And so I had one other new guy with me who I'm still great friends with to this day. But outside of that, we didn't really have the other people to be collabing with. And if you asked me then, like back then, I was very much kind of like the lone wolf. I was the person that hated group projects. I hated teamwork. Everything was just like, no, I don't want these people dragging me down. And in college, when you're kind of grouped with the masses, that's probably the right mindset. But then what I've learned in kind of my later years was, if you can find people that that are kind of on your level, you gain so much from collaboration. When you're paired with the right people, there's no way you don't end up better off. And if I could have been an X trader with the right group of people, every trader will be X plus Y. And so now so much of what I emphasize in a lot of the work I do is how do you build powerful teams of traders, essentially. And I've done that at Trillium. I've been doing that at SMB. And the group of who you surround yourself with is almost everything. And likewise, that's why I'm such a big fan of what you and Nate do for otherwise the retail community that doesn't have this environment. And so then as far as coaches, I eventually worked with pretty much he's a performance psychologist, I would say, that specializes in traders, almost like Wendy on Billions. And oddly enough, though, to everyone's surprise, we've never once discussed nuances of trading, even though he helps a lot of traders. For me, trading was never the constraint. It was how can I be a better manager? How can I be a better trainer? How can I be a better person in my personal life? And how can I get all those ducks in a row to help me then be the best, productive trader I can be? So and I still use him to this day, actually. And it's while he does trading topics with a lot of people, for me, it's always been, how can I get everything else optimized, which then ends up being the feedback loop for good trading and good performance.
I definitely want to talk about quite a few of those topics as our interview goes on, particularly, the trading community, providing education for the trading community, which you do an extremely well job of. And I think it ought to be applauded. I mean, the amount of content that you provide on your Twitter account alone is extremely helpful for not just the retail traders, but I'm sure prop traders and all sorts of, excellent elite traders are also reading that and taking notes as well. So
thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah. One question I had as you started to turn the corner from, having struggles with trading in the early years to the more success that you had. How were you approaching your milestones? Were you more of like the, okay, let's go out and celebrate, or were you just nose to the grind, order a pizza in on a Friday night and just review tape? How do you feel about, celebrating the successes and, versus still having a ways to go? What's your philosophy on that?
Sure. So for me, especially in those early years, I was just so one track minded. I just knew this is the opportunity of a lifetime. Forget having fun, forget partying, forget the social life. I can make up for that later. Right now, all I need to do is make it at this job and reach the highest level I can, because especially at the intraday level, day trading doesn't last forever. The markets are always getting more efficient in general. In the 2020, 2021 was kind of an outlier, but in general, efficiencies increase. As you get older, your responsibilities, your other obligations, your desire for balance increases. So I knew, and my trainer always said, like, make hay while the sun is shining. And 22, 23, 24, 25, I didn't care about those years. I just knew, Lance, you can set yourself up for the rest of your life, and to never have to struggle and worry about money every day. It's like, do whatever it's going to take. And so Lance back then is a very different person from who I am now. And I think I've learned a lot, matured a lot. But I think the world's also progressed in terms of balance and performance and productivity. And so back then there was no big celebration, which I now know is probably somewhat of a mistake, because I think you do need the reward aspect to stay motivated. You do need balance to stay charged and everything. So I probably should have not burnt the candle as much as I did. But then, yeah, on a good day, especially when I was in Princeton, it might have been like, oh wow, I can finally afford like a $20 dinner or something. It's like I always joke that when I started, the Trillium salary was 26K, so I was essentially between rent, student loan payments, and everything else, I was just hunting sewer rats for lunch.
Good to know. That's extremely helpful to hear.
Yep.
And another question I had was about your trainer. When you were first starting out and you weren't putting up big numbers necessarily, what was that relationship like? And for newer traders who might have a mentor or a trainer, or be in a community where there's guys that are just guys and girls who are just knocking it out of the park, how can these new traders maintain some sort of equity in that relationship and keep in contact and make sure that they're still valuable and welcome in that space?
Yep. So I think, without a question of a doubt, my trainer was definitely increasingly frustrated with my performance. He would, because essentially, look, you've got this amazing trainer, that you've got some of the best resources. Come on, man, like, why aren't you getting it? Why aren't you getting it? Some was maybe productive and a kick in the butt, some maybe less productive. But I think the biggest thing for people that were in my position is, no matter how much I sucked or how slow I was at the time, two big things. I conceptually understood the topics, but I just knew I was just slow to connect in real time. But then the bigger thing, I was always adding so much value to my group. And so people on Twitter and everywhere always ask about mentorship. How do you find a good mentor? And I'm like, look, find someone. You don't need to, and everyone's asking me for mentorship. And it's like, dude, you don't need me to mentor you. I don't have the capacity. Find someone one step above you, or even on your level, two steps above you. Find someone super close that was in your shoes most recently, but is kind of like a step or two down the path further, and start figuring out how you can add value to them. And people will want me to figure out, oh, but how do I do that, Lance? That's part of the challenge to you. It's your job to figure out what can I do to assist this person? So for my group, I would do studies and analyze trades that nobody asked me to, right? When the bond auction goes off, what happens based on data points? When a WASD agricultural number comes out, what happens? On a nat gas number, what happens? On all these different data types, what happens? What do IPOs tend to do that open up above their pricing? What happens to IPOs that open up below their pricing? I would do all these analyses and all these studies to help refine our group's edge. I would have really, really awesome call outs because even though I wasn't able to execute yet, I wasn't skilled enough, I was still making the group tremendous amounts of money. So if you want to talk about a 26 grand salary, I was probably making my group hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's like, yeah, eventually, like at no point did I really think I wouldn't be fired, because it would be a laughable economic decision to fire me. You're just shooting your own P&L in the foot for no reason, right? And the bigger question was, well, I myself need to pull the ripcord because my opportunity cost at, say, a sales and trading firm, or like a different trading firm where you're not quite intraday frenetic trading, the opportunity cost at that point was probably 100K a year, which when you have negative net wealth is a lot.
Right. That's extremely powerful too, because I think it highlights the importance of focusing on more than just, P&L. And also it kind of gives credence to the idea that like everyone faces their own journey as a trader, and there's no clear path. Everyone's going to have a very unique set of circumstances that they're going to have to navigate in a very personal way. And so trying to just take what worked for Lance or some other, elite trader and try to mold oneself to that, it seems like that's actually potentially more harmful than anything else, because you could just be setting yourself extra issues to deal with. Is that kind of accurate to say?
Yeah, for sure. And I think like really everybody out there should be asking, how can I add the most value to whatever community you're a part of? So let's say you value your job, or you want to be a really great employee. You want to say, what is the value I provide? How can I maximize that value? And the same for not that you want to get like too finance crazy analytical with everything, but like, how can I be the best friend I can be? How can I be the best partner? How can I be the best community member? And so with some of the trading stuff, like, or even with the mentorship, like you want to figure out like what is your edge and what is your strength. Like one other thing that I think like people might scoff at as being not a legit edge or value add, but I'm a huge optimist, right? I'm generally a very happy guy. Like people want to be around happy people, right? Like if especially on the desk, like I was always joking around, always having fun. When unlike 2020, 2021, trading is boring 95% of the time. You want someone that's fun to shoot the shit with, that's going to have positive attitude, that's going to keep you going. Like you don't want to be like, there's nothing more I hate than just negative people and complainers. Cause like, it just creates that huge feedback loop where like, once one person starts complaining, everybody starts complaining, and you just focus on all the bad. And it's like, most people like, life is pretty good. Like if you want it to be good, life is good. And, but like your outlook, your optimism, that's a way to add value. Think about with both Bella Fiore and Nate, they're just amazing connectors of people, right? Like what I've seen from Nate over the last couple of years is he's always thinking like, how can I help this person, right? Like, okay, Lance, how can I help your nonprofit? How can I introduce you to this person? Even for dumb stuff like getting me on flight boards on the lake. Yeah. He's like, oh, I've got this guy. Like any questions, just reach out to him. Oh, like if I can help you with this, that. Like he's just like always. With Bella and Nate, their minds are just always going with like, how can I make the most of this time? How can I make the most of my network? How can I add the most value to help these people? Just because they're kind and they care. And stuff like that, like that's maybe been my biggest lesson of the last couple of years, is like that stuff is it matters so much in life, and like that long-term trajectory of who you're surrounded with.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense too, and it also says something about you and your mindset, and just optimism, being able to provide a lot more than just P&L, especially during a pandemic in finance where the markets first took a dip. If you're able to find a way to smile and make people happy in that time, like you're probably really helpful and good for a firm and the culture for a firm in the long run, especially when times are a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah, like I mean, trading's stressful enough. Like COVID was stressful enough, and you need like, or even not just optimism, but like also just someone that's going to push you to be your best, someone that's going to push you to achieve. And like, yeah, like I was definitely extremely strict, because I felt like that's what the job required. But like, I think most people need to really, really be pushed to achieve their maximum. And like and I don't know if this is just justifying my own actions, but like I would equate it to, the majority of people call it in the military, you need the boot camp and the, boom, this is a regiment, you got to do this, must do it, yeah, rah, rah, rah. And then there's this very select subset of people, the 1 in 100, where they're just extremely self-motivated, and they're like, hey, I can be the Navy SEAL just out of, like, in the Navy SEALs and stuff. Like if you listen to Jocko or Goggins or any of those people, like they don't really do much of the yelling or pushing because it's just expected, right? And they know that these people are that way. But if most people aren't, like, you need someone there really pushing you to know just how good you can be, right? And to extract the most of your potential. And that's also a value, like someone that pushes. And it's something, again, Mike is great at, and what makes him such a good coach for his firm is like he tries to extract the best out of people. And that's like it's very intangible, but that is a priceless trait. And if you look at Nate, right, who grinds harder than Nate with his scan? Like I've never seen anybody work like that. I was spent after 10, 11 years, and like seeing it, it's like, but guess what? Nate is setting that example for everybody in the room, right? He's setting that example to the whole community. And so for me, when I was managing, right, some guys would slack off because I wasn't pushing. And I remember I had this talk with one of my trainees, and he was super, super hot out of the gate, but then that early success led to, kind of just the slacking off on some of his habits. I'm like, dude, you need to be working, these hours, this is mandatory. If you're not doing it, you're going to be out of here. And he's like, how long do I need to work these hours? And I'm like, dude, what time do you see me get in? He's like, before then. And I'm like, what time do you see me leave? He's like, after then. And I'm like, look, this isn't a mandate. This is just what's required by the job. And it was my job to lead by that example. It was my job to be in there every Sunday. It was my job to show people that, like, to reach this level, it's not because I'm gifted. It's because I'm putting that work in, day out, when it's slow, when it's active, on good days, on bad days. And most people don't have the grit, discipline, systems in place to sustain that for many years. But if you do that for many years, literally you can accomplish anything.
The amount of time that it takes even to become just like a flat on a given day or a month seems like it takes a lot of work. And so I can only imagine, as an elite trader, the amount of work that you have to put in, how like wired you have to be into sort of the pulse of the market. It seems like, the more I hear you speak, it seems like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that you would have to put in that much time to be that good at what you do. And especially hearing you talk about Nate, like I can absolutely attest, in all my years having been around Nate and part of the Investors Underground community, like Nate is just always on it. He's issuing a scan. he's tweeting to let people know, just not even that he's long or short, just ideas for the market, talking in the room, making videos for the community. He does a lot. He's always working. And it's actually really great that Nate and Mike, who I know and have met on several occasions, Mike is great. The fact that those two get to work together on something like Traders for a Cause is just really, really awesome. To see those two connect on something is really great.
Yeah, and what's unique, and I think again it goes back to like so much I've learned from like Atomic Habits and just life. Like everything is your environment, right? And not just environment, but surrounding yourself with the right people. And again, it's not, we're not just talking trading, right? Like if your five best friends don't go to the gym, don't do anything active, they just go out drinking every night, they don't have ambitions, they're not pushing each other, guess what? Odds are, if they're just eating and drinking, sitting on their butts, say they're overweight, out of shape, guess what? Odds are you're going to be too. These statistics on if one of your close friends smokes cigarettes or whatever, the probability that you will also become or be a smoker is staggeringly high. And obviously, smoking is probably one of the dumbest things you can do. But the opposite is also true, where it's like if you take the time to surround yourself with people that are fit, pushing themselves, learning, ambitions, ethical, kind people, and like both Mike and Nate, they give back, which was also unique. And that's also why we all clicked so well, because I also was a fan of giving back to the community, giving back via charity, gratitude, like, going back to those traits that you want on your desk. You want gratitude. You want grit, you want gratitude, you want people that will help push you, right? Like, the dream trainee is not just someone that succeeds, but someone that helps you be better as a trainer. They motivate and inspire you. Like the more you can work with top guys and top people, and that's the beauty of what I do now with all my little baskets and areas of the work I do. It's incredible because I'm solely surrounded with people that I love working with, right? And it's people that push me to be better, people that I learn from. And you just can't put a price on that. Like the effect that'll have over 5, 10, 20, 30 years. Like how much of a better person do you become when you're with these people?
It sounds like you are reaching out and still fostering relationships, and is that accurate?
Yeah, for sure. And ideally, I'm just trying to also relay a lot of the ethos that would have been like, look, if I was managing an office and you were in it, well, what would this look like? And yeah, you get the information. Then I always laugh because there's these people on Twitter that are like, how would you make this daily report card apply to Forex? And it's like, dude, like you tell me, like you put the work in. I like, okay, like how do I find a mentor? How do I add value to them? It's like, you tell me. And a good one was someone asked me about the Bollinger Bands, and I'm like, look, this is what they're set to. They send a screenshot of their software. What do I need to put in on this? It's like, bro, like what do you want me to do for you? Like because I hate helplessness, right? Like you don't want the trainee that is going to be like, how do I restart my computer? How do I do this? It's like, bro, like you've got Google, you've got a brain, like try your best to figure it out. Like you should only come to someone once you've tried your best to figure it out. Like struggle a little bit. Like people are so afraid of struggling. Like you can't be afraid of discomfort. You can't be afraid of struggle. You need to embrace it. Fail a couple of times. Like people are, you just can't be afraid of failure. You can't be afraid of banging your head against the wall. Like, yeah, I don't know, try something. Like I'm a huge tinkerer. If something's not working, tinker, adjust, reflect. Did it work? Did it like what other change? And then just iterate. And so many people click your screen and see what happens. Change this DRC and see what happens. Reach out to a mentor. And if they ignore you and don't reply, guess what? Figure out what you could have done better. Scour the internet. What makes a good cold email and stuff. And it's so self-selective, right? Because like the people that do that, you're setting yourself up for success. And like, it's funny just with the interview process, so many times it's like by definition of you not doing X, Y, or Z, like I actually have my answer already, you know? And that's always interesting too.
Yeah, no, I think that's extremely helpful because there are a lot of people that I see on Twitter and elsewhere that are asking for the answers rather than positing the results of their research and then asking maybe a mentor if they could, analyze the work
Yep.
that they had already done. It seems like it's more, a person could achieve their goals a lot faster probably and maybe make a lot more trading friends and maybe meet a mentor if they're putting the work in themselves and maybe asking for thoughts rather than trying to just
Yep.
use an experienced elite trader as a personified Google.
And that's, yeah, and that's the funny part because the paradox too is you get the right answer faster and better in the short term, but you're hamstringing yourself in the long term, right? Because you aren't teaching yourself to fish. You aren't right. There was when I was struggling, my trainer was giving me the strategies and I was observing, I was learning, but like there was nobody out there that was going to figure it out for me. There was nobody out there that was going to be able to know what's going on in my head and figure out my specific issues. The only way I was able to do that was like I struggled. I struggled and I reflected and I thought and I put the time in to figure out like what is not working here. There was in so many things with whether with like with life, friends, relationships, work, whatever. It's like there is no Google for like, hey Google, what job should I take, or like what should I do to find fulfillment? There's nobody that can answer that, right? Let alone Google. And yeah, the people I think that end up going the furthest are the people that make sure they're just. It's like this weird thing where you do better with working with others, but in order to be working well with others at a high level, you need to be self-sufficient as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's extremely, extremely powerful. And I'll just insert the caveat that I'm pretty sure we would both make, which is like there are a time and place for questions. Like questions are important. Like I don't want anyone to think that we're
Oh,
like
for sure. Yeah.
bashing questions for the sake of asking questions. Like,
But
there are,
it's struggle first. Bang your
yeah,
head against the wall.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
make an attempt,
mhm,
and then, uh,
yeah.
yeah. Try. Just don't be, dependent on others until you need to be.
Yeah, yeah, and I think being an optimist myself, like there is a lot of like hope that people can actually achieve a lot on their own. But they might not think that they know the answer to something, but that they could definitely do the work, and they probably figure out that they'll get themselves like to an answer that they're relatively comfortable with if they just do the work and do it.
And it's such a powerful thing also to throw it back on people and say, what is your answer to this? Right? Because you force them to think. And so often, like they might bring up something that you weren't even thinking of yourself, or they might come up with some. You want to know what I love about some of like the high level kind of like elite group work is one person will have, and you can see this in all these in all these like team meetings and team reviews and other meetings I'm a part of, where one person will have an idea and you'll be like, oh, like that's a great idea. And then someone is like, oh, wait, like based on that idea, like the next logical jump, you go from A to B. Then someone else thinks back and you're like, wait a second, like based on my experience, like, oh man, like this point B actually brings us to C. And all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, like I can't believe we just made it to C. And if you took those individuals, if those individuals were on their own, nobody would have ever made it to point C. And I help with my friends are doing kind of this small business lending startup, and we were on this call, and there was just like a business operations problem, and it was exactly that, where one guy said something, some guy said something else, and then I'm like, holy crap, like this is the missing puzzle piece. And like we ended up at this end place where like you can't do that unless you have a group, and unless you have a group where each member is thinking and contributing.
No, that's extremely powerful. That's extremely helpful. One topic that I wanted to touch on as well, sort of on this, you know, in the breadth of like trader development and questions that traders typically ask, you've seen and worked with and mentored and coached a lot of traders. And so I'm curious, what are some of the most common, issues and questions that you see from traders, and how hard is it, or how long does it take, for someone to fix some of those issues, or get through some of, those questions that people have, which lead into larger issues?
Yep. And so, man, I would say I've seen people struggle with everything under the sun. Everyone comes in with their own personalities, their own experiences, their own tendencies. There's people that are extremely risk averse. Then there's people that are just gung-ho, shotgun approach, trade everything and burn through a bunch of money. And it's kind of funny because I think when you start with a raw, fresh trader, it tells so much about that person. Who's the person that's like willing to immediately just jump in and get trading? For me, it's like, oh, let me read the manual first. I'll just read the trading manual. Then maybe I'll place it, because that's just my personality. And then you find the people that like the thought of risking $5, all they can think about is a $5 bill or a $20 bill or a $100 bill. And for whatever reason, I think something that helped me was like, not that I had money at the time, but like for me, money, the P&L was always just a number on the screen. I never thought of it as money. And like you would get these guys and they just couldn't detach from, oh my God, like if I lose $200, that's $200 out of my pocket. And you can never achieve as much if you're always tied to that. It's a chain weighing you down. Not that you can't be successful, but you can't jump as high until you say like, I'm free from this need. I don't need this money. And then you have people that overtrade, and almost like some of the gamblers where they just need the action and they need to be proven right. And there will be people where you're going to like, probably one of the first indicators, is this person going to make it, is when you give them a playbook and you say, the first step to learn anything is, this is our playbook. Everything else is not going to work. Just trust me. Everything else you do, like, ooh, stock's going up, I think this is a buy, that's a sell. Everything you do is going to fail. It's not going to work. But in these couple situations, these very niche situations where nuances A, B, C, D, and E are true, you're going to have a little bit of edge there. And when A, B, C, and D are true, the way to capture it is you buy here, your stop is that, and that's the trade. And so quickly, you see the people that are able to say like, okay, I trust Lance. I'm going to explicitly follow that instruction. I understand that if I don't do what Lance says, I'm going to lose money. And if I do it, maybe it's going to make sense. And so many people, then when you're released, like, okay, universe of stocks, go do what I just told you. There's the people that do the trades anyways, and you say, hey, why were you doing that? That didn't fit A, B, C, and D, right? Like, C is this. Well, it doesn't fit C. And they're like, yeah, but I kind of thought it was going to go up because the market felt like it was ready to pop. And you're like, yeah, but how'd that work out for you? Then after like 10 reps and they're losing money, you say, hey man, like we've got all these data points. Like what you're doing isn't working. Like, want to just kind of like just listen to what I'm trying to teach you, and so many people can't do it. And I don't know if it's like an ego thing or the need to be right and smart, but that's really common for a lot of traders where like, and even at the elite level, a lot of people have these ideas or theses in their head or these views, and that's not where I've seen anybody ever make money. The place where people make money is you have these ideas, but the technical pattern and the chart and everything is confirming it. Like it's fine to have a bias. If stocks are down 30% in 3 days, I'm not going to be thinking, ooh, this might be a good short. Of course, you're going to be long biased, right? But until that setup reveals itself, until A, B, C, and D show itself and fits your playbook to confirm your long thesis, that's where the money's made, right? When thesis meets setup and meets price action, that's where people do well.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. Thanks for watching.